One of the big things I think a lot of people are going to be horribly shocked by, of course, is the upcoming Australian trade deal. We are expecting, shall we say, the full thing to be released at least within the next 2 months. They said end of October, beginning of November. So we'll have to see, and I've said before, there are going to be things in there which are going to shock a lot of people, and stuff that we have heard come out from Cambria that the British government has not denied. For example, one of the things that we've heard is the fact that there were going to be tariff lengths for how long the tariffs would be dropped off for. And even the farmers were like, well, in 15 years, that's going to have a huge impact on us regardless. But apparently those tariffs and that time limit apparently in the deal is not there. This was another leak that came out that, again, wasn't covered. The Australian government didn't deny it. The UK government didn't deny it. But the difference is why this is making a big, shall we say, splash, is that, well, these are in a leaked email from the UK government. And it has basically shown what we have said would probably happen. That in these trade talks, where normally that we have had for the past 40 years, we have been able to see and know what these trade deals, what is going on. Now, these talks go behind closed doors. So we have no idea what is going on in this Australian trade deal. But the very fact here that the UK has dropped all its climate promises for its trade deal with Australia shows what we can expect, not only from the Australian trade deal, but any future trade deals going forward, because the UK just is not strong enough to enforce any of these climate promises or even to try and protect its own trade. Like I say, some of these trade deals are going to be absolutely catastrophic for the UK. So let's jump into this then, shall we? But before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And also down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So this comes from The Independent, and the title is UK secretly dropped climate promises for trade deal with Australia, leaked email shows. So the British government has secretly dropped a series of climate pledges in order to secure a post-Brexit trade deal with Australia, leaked emails appear to show. Liz Truss, the Trade Secretary, and Kirsty Quatang, the Business Secretary, decided to drop both of the climate asks and the text of the UK-Australia agreement in order to get it over the line, according to an email from a senior official. Sorry. A binding section with references to the Paris Agreement on temperature goals was scrubbed from the accord after pressure from the Southern Hemisphere's country's government, which is notoriously weak record on climate action. The embarrassing revelation just comes weeks before the government is set to host a landmark UN climate conference, the COP26 in Glasgow, where it's supposed to ask countries to make stronger commitments to cutting emissions. Last month, Boris Johnson claimed that any trade deal with Australia would include a chapter on trade and the environment, which not only reaffirmed the commitment to multilateral environmental agencies and agreements, including the Paris Agreement, but also commits both parties to collaborate on the climate and environmental issues. So much for all that then. The Prime Minister claimed that more trade will not come at the expense of the environment, and in June the two countries reached an agreement in principle to cut tariffs and quotas. John Severu, the executive director of Greenpeace in the UK, said the government's actions would signal the start of a race to the bottom, and accused Boris Johnson of having lied about the issue. The UK government pledged to embed the environment at the very heart of trade, including supporting the Paris Agreement on the climate and zero deforestation in supply chains, Mr. Sullivan said. The signing of an Australian trade deal with action on climate and temperature commitments were secretly removed is polar opposite to everything Boris Johnson has publicly pledged and rips at the very heart of what the government stands for. The Greenpeace chief added, It will be a race to the bottom, impacting on all clean sectors of farmers and livelihoods. And should there be any more moratorium on trade deals with countries like Australia until they improve their weak climate targets and end deforestation? At the moment, the public and Parliament are being duped by the Prime Minister into thinking that this deal is great for Britain, when in reality, it could be further from the truth. What is also clear is that the government's promise to public consultation on updates on the progress of the negotiations are also completely inadequate. It is time Parliament demanded proper scrutiny for trade deals. And of course, we've had that before. We had a vote in Parliament almost a year ago now, in fact, more than that now, of where Parliament wanted to properly scrutinise these trade deals before they're signed and get a vote on them. No, the Conservatives voted completely against that. Surprise, surprise. The Brexiteers in the government, like Trade Secretary Miss Truss, have both been desperate to secure trade deals with other countries to try and prove that leaving the EU has benefits. But experts say that the drive for agreements at any cost has put the UK in a weak negotiating position. The email was sent last month and details internal discussions between Truss, Kersey Katang, and the Brexit Minister Frost. It originates from the Deputy Director of the government's Chief Trade Secretariat, which is part of the Cabinet Office. The email says, as flagged in my note to Lord Frost and the Businesses and Trade Secretary, we are due to speak yesterday. We haven't set out the formal readout, but we understand that the conversation took place with the Business Secretary had agreed that in order to get the Australia FTA over the line, the DIT can drop both of the climate asks, i.e., on the predicture of multinational environmental agreements, of the FTA positions, and of course the reference to the Paris Agreement and temperature goals. This change makes the deal far weaker than the Brexit agreement with the EU and other FTAs negotiated by the UK. The Paris deal requires that countries set goals in order to limit global warming well below 2 Celsius, preferably to 1.5. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has refused to comment on talking his country to a net zero by 2050, even after the UN's most recent Code Red warning was issued. Instead, Australia's government is holding to an existing pledge of cutting carbon emissions by 26% to 28% below 2005 levels by 2030. Australia is the second largest exporter of coal in the world and has the highest per capita carbon footprint, according to the European Commission data. Of 176 new coal projects across the world, 79 of them are in Australia, according to Finch. Caroline Lucas, member of the Cross-Party UK Trade and Business Commission and Green Party MP, said, weeks before the UK is due to host an international summit to secure climate action, this revelation paints a very bleak picture about what both the government's priorities and their abysmal negotiating power post-Brexit. Only yesterday, the government showed how they are willing to break any promise they make to the public and their readiness to compromise on any existential challenge of our time, and raises very serious concerns on what else might be on the trade table in the ongoing trade negotiations. And we've talked about that before. I am incredibly worried what is going to be in that paper. Incredibly worried. Jean Baylock, the trade campaigner at the group Global Justice Now, said this episode was typical of the government's approach to trade deals. Climate commitments will always come second to a free trade agreement, regardless of the consequences for the planet, she said. Even deals that contain specific climate commitments, often signed up as a secret co-op courts, allow big polluters to even sue governments for taking climate action. The kind of trade deals that we are pursuing are completely incompatible with decarbonisation. Tweaking the text of the trade deal is not enough. We need to fundamentally reshape our system of global trade to save us from a climate catastrophe. Ed Miliband said, the Labour Shadow Business Secretary said that this revelation underscores yet again what the greenwashing government cannot be trusted on the climate. With COP26 just round the corner, the government should be flexing every single political muscle to try and ensure that the summit is a success, he said, and it is not. I think this COP26 summit is going to be, well, just full of hot air, and I think nothing is going to be agreed. Our government has absolutely no negotiating power at all, and this just proves it. Again, these quote unquote fantastic trade deals, and how Britain is a fantastic secretive trading nation that has been released from the grips of the EU and can do all these fantastic trade deals, is just a complete myth. We've been talking about this since day one. Australia is one of the world's biggest polluters, and the key and the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. But rather than piling pressure on them, the government have just simply rolled over. This government is pursuing trade deals at the expense of our farmers and now our climate targets, and it is simply a massive betrayal of our country and our planet. A government spokesperson said, "Our ambitious trade deal with Australia will include a substantive article on climate change, which reaffirms both parties' commitments to the Paris Agreement and achieving its goals by including limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. Any suggestion this deal won't sign up to these vital commitments is completely untrue." We'll see if that statement, shall we say, passes muster when the final deal is out. The UK's climate change and environmental policies are some of the most ambitious in the world, reflecting our commitments as the first major economy to pass new laws for a net zero emissions by 2050. Again, that ain't going to happen. Not if, like I say, as what have we been warning since day one, that some of these deals that we are going to try and do are going to be awfully rushed. They are going to expose our economy to huge disasters going forward, and other things like this will just sneak through into them. Like I say, this so-called fantastic trade deal with America, Brexiteers are again thirsting to do. We're obviously going to get those corporate courts in, which is a factor of a feature of pretty much every new US trade deal, so that these corporate courts can literally sue the government if they do anything that might harm their business, such as pass regulations on workers' rights, pay, standards, protections, you name it. If it somehow affects their bottom line, they can sue the government. Those again, like I say, when this deal and this finally comes out, I think a lot of people are going to be absolutely shocked, but it's just going to be another opportunity to absolutely tear into this absolutely atrocious government, and it is going to be an absolute massive L for the Brexiteers, who have been constantly claiming about how we can have these quote-unquote fantastic trade deals. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all the people for supporting the channel that way. And of course, we'll see you all